Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Uday Bhaskar. This week the focus is on a very important security issue that alas does not receive adequate attention, namely the security of women and the girl child. The trigger for this focus is the recent Supreme Court verdict that upheld the death sentence in a 2012 gang rape and murder case. This gruesome incident, also referred to as the Nirbhaya case, took place in Delhi in December 2012. And remember, Delhi is the capital of India. At the time, it shocked and jolted the nation, and various initiatives were mooted. The case was prosecuted with the urgency it warranted. The fast-track court awarded the death sentence to the perpetrators. This was upheld by the Delhi High Court, and now the case has also been upheld. The Supreme Court, has also upheld the death penalty. Given the decades taken to prosecute such rape cases, the Nirbhaya case has moved swiftly, and all the agencies involved need to be commended for this closure. However, there are many layered issues that merit scrutiny. In 2014, Parliament was informed that India ranks third in the list of countries with the highest number of reported rapes. In 2010, a total of 22,172 rape cases were registered. The statistics are grim. Rape and related sexual violence is rampant globally, yet the greater tragedy is that more than 90% of such violation does not get reported. What is in the public domain is the veritable tip of a murky iceberg. As per United Nations data in the year 2010, the United States recorded the highest number of rape cases, a total of 85,593. Brazil was second with 41,180. Will the Supreme Court verdict advance the security of women in India and serve as a deterrent? The related issue is the ethical dimension. Should the death penalty be invoked even in the rarest of the rare cases? To discuss these issues, we have an eminent panel. Allow me to introduce Dr. Varsha Das, former director of the National Gandhi Museum, Ms. Pamela Philipose, who is currently public editor of The Wire, Ms. Vrinda Grover, a well-known Supreme Court lawyer and human rights activist, and Natasha Ahuja, a young student who has just finished with the Lady Shri Ram College. Ms. Grover, let me turn to you first. The Supreme Court verdict that has upheld the death sentence, will this serve as a deterrent? Will it advance the case of the security of women in India? How do you see it as a Supreme Court lawyer?
The Nirbhaya judgment, as it's being called, is an emblematic case, and therefore it deserves some attention. What are we looking for when we talk about security of women? We are basically saying that are women going to be able to exercise their citizenship in as equal as men? Will they be able to live as free citizens of the country? So that's what security is meant to provide us. What is important to underline in the Nirbhaya case, which you have already mentioned, is that different agencies, whether it's the police, whether it's the medical treatment given to her, whether it's the prosecution, whether it's the court, they have worked in a certain way. My concern here is that these have not become the benchmark in which the legal system is operating. This case has been treated as an exception, and therefore it was fast-tracked. Therefore, she was provided the best of prosecutorial and investigation teams. For women in the country to be able to feel safe, secure, and free, this needs to become the manner in which the legal system and all ancillary systems will work. I don't see anything that is being done to internalize this within the system, failing which we cannot say that this will become a deterrent. And as far as the death sentence is concerned, and we'll discuss it, I suppose, a little later, the deterrence of death sentence itself has been questioned globally. There is no data to support that. And the invocation of collective conscience is extremely troubling, and we need to
But we'll come back to this. But would it be fair then to say that what you are suggesting is that the Nirbhaya case is really the gold standard, but it may not quite be emulated because we don't seem to have the capacity. Would that be a fair
I don't think it's about capacity.
intent?
I think we are not, the state is not putting its money where its mouth is. And for instance, the Bilkis Bano case, 15 years, it's only reached the High Court.
That's another subject that we'll have to have another panel. But Pamela, can I bring you in on this? You've been writing on women's issues for many years.
Yes, yes.
How do you see the Nirbhaya verdict and the media in India? How do they deal with these cases?
No, I agree with Vrinda in the sense that it is emblematic. But I'm so glad that you are actually seeing things in a broader way. That security, which is normally framed in terms of, realist politics and so on, is actually being given a gender dimension. I think that is the important point to flag here.
Can I take the liberty of saying human dimension?
Human dimension as well. No, absolutely. So that's the idea, that we have to now see security of women, not just through the criminal justice framework, but through their constitutional rights. And I think the mobilization that took place in December 2012 was precisely for that. In fact, most of the women who came out, at least, there were two actually sort of narratives that emerged. One was that, we need to protect and patronize women. We need to ensure that they're locked up, that they shouldn't wear dresses of a certain kind. That approach vis-a-vis the other narrative, which many feminists and ordinary people articulated, was give us freedom, more women on the streets make us more secure.
Which I think is a fair point for any society or state. But Dr. Das, can I bring you in on this? There are two issues here. Both Vrinda and Pamela have spoken about the distinctive nature of the Nirbhaya case. But one issue that repeatedly comes up is the death penalty, and whether or not the death sentence, if you will, does serve the deterrent purpose, or is there another way of looking at this, as Pamela says, that there is a whole humanist, and you've been writing, speaking, and this is an area that you work on. How do you look at this?
Death penalty has never been a deterrent. I mean, Gandhiji was assassinated. The person who assassinated was hanged. But assassinations and murders haven't stopped. More than 30 years ago in Delhi itself, we had seen Geeta Chopra,
Right.
a teenage school girl who was raped and murdered. Ranga and Billa were hanged. Where is deterrence? So, death penalty, I think these criminals, maybe they are perverted minds. Maybe there are all kinds of aberrations in their lives. I don't know. The whole society seems to have become very insecure. I feel very insecure if I have to drive at night. I mean, when I came to Delhi, I was in my late 20s. I was feeling insecure even at that time. And now I am in my 70s, I still feel insecure. I didn't feel that in Bombay. So I don't know what is happening, and it's not just Delhi, it is like spreading all over the country now. Then if you look at the statistics, the data, I mean, these kind of crimes have increased out of proportion.
So that is empirical, that the crimes have increased. But Vrinda, two things here. One is Varsha says that the death sentence has not served as a deterrent.
Yes.
If we accept that for purposes of our discussion, what does the state do then, or what does society do to ensure that all women in this city and elsewhere feel relatively safe and secure to be able to, as you say, even inhabit the streets? What would be your suggestion?
Actually, many things, and they've been put on the table on numerous occasions. And those are things which are not glamorous, which we as a society have to get down to the nitty-gritties of. What is happening here, and I think apart from the fact that it's absolutely not a deterrence, death penalty and a death sentence today is serving to distract the state and society. And everybody is baying for blood, to externalize the problem. And when we talk about sexual violence and rape of women, let's be very clear, the largest number of rapes and sexual violence are happening in homes, in our neighborhood, by people known to us. What is happening today is that we've said, there are 4 men who are the bad men in India, and we are going to eliminate them, and we are all the good people. The state is allowed, therefore, to say we've done what we had to do. And therefore, death penalty is actually not allowing us to focus on where are the gaps in the legal system. Why is it that investigations even today are being done unprofessionally and with prejudice in different prosecutions? Fast track court is a complete myth. It does not exist. All these are factors, and there are inherent biases and prejudices across the legal system. We are not confronting those. We are not dealing with what is happening with the Nirbhaya fund. And please, it's not about CCTV and surveillance, etc. What are the economic rights we are giving to women so that there is less inequality and they can come forward? Those are areas where the social discussion is not being permitted.
So would it again be fair to say that despite the judgment by the Supreme Court, which has upheld the earlier courts, that as a collective, as a society and state, we are still not recognizing the elephant in the room? That's where you're getting. Okay, let me get Natasha. Natasha, you represent the youth of Delhi. You've been living in the city for a while. You're a graduate from one of our better known colleges, Lady Shri Ram. How did you see this particular Supreme Court verdict? And what do you have to say about this whole question of the security? I mean, how do young ladies like you feel in Delhi?
So, the whole idea of the death penalty is to reinstate this idea of justice for us as women in an unsafe city. But I don't think it really does anything because, come to think of it, when my friends in college, there was some sort of molestation case that happened and they wanted to lodge an FIR. They couldn't do that. They had to get 20 people to come in and lodge the FIR. I mean, if you can't even lodge an FIR, how on earth is the idea of a death penalty, like 4 people being hanged, actually going to reinstate this idea of justice? It's not going to in any way lead to more security for women. So
I hope the police commissioner of Delhi is tuning in and that they are listening to what you're saying. But go ahead, that's a good point about how police stations, deal with young girls when they
so it starts
go to stations.
So my point is it starts at that level, and I'm lucky enough to live in a safe neighborhood, but I think it's more about providing for safer neighborhoods, because it's in these neighborhoods that these cases take place, because as ma'am said earlier that these cases generally are like the rapists tend to be from the neighborhood or at home itself. I mean, we live in the 21st century. Marital rape is still legal. So there are lots of problems. I think we have a long way to go in terms of women's security in the country.
Okay, thanks. That's a good point. Pamela, can I ask you to comment on the police issue?
Yes.
Because this is something that, has come up very often.
No,
that police investigations, are not empathetic, they're not thorough, and that very often you have 2 levels of the application of the law. That those who are rich and powerful, we have a number of such cases, who even in rape cases get away with it, and the police do not act with the same kind of, shall we say.
Absolutely. And the verdict, by the way, was critiqued. This present verdict was critiqued for not sufficiently looking at the whole policing issue. In fact, they were very fulsome in their praise for the prompt way in which the police, went about their job on this case. But the issue is that why did the incident happen in the first place? It indicated a lack of policing, as policing should be, making the city safe for everyone, man, woman and child, at night. So the point is the public space is everybody's space, and that has to be internalized by every citizen in this country. This about the police and the arrogance of the police, it was Justice Verma who actually highlighted it in his report. He and his wonderful team. We've just lost Justice Leela Seth. And the team actually saw policing as a very, very important issue. And they emphasized the importance of the FIR and how the police should be open and receptive and not suspicious. You see, the police have the same mindset as a very patriarchal society, and it is to actually change that mindset and to make the police sympathetic to the woman who's seeking justice. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Vrinda, I'll just get you in. I just want to ask for a 30-second comment from you, Dr. Das. As you said, you've been watching Delhi for the last 40-50 years. Now, we know that in recent decades, we also have had a greater number of women joining the police force. Now, Delhi police makes this one of its planks, saying that, we are with you, for you. What has been your experience? And I just want you to look at the way ahead.
Well, we have been reading in the papers that there are so many vacancies in the police force. So I feel that if we only depend on the police, perhaps things will take very long time to change. I think the society has to wake up. I mean, some of the victims are shouting on the road for help, but no help comes. I mean, this kind of apathy in the society, like indifference, I don't know what are the reasons. Maybe because they don't want to get involved in the another police affairs or court kacheri mamlas and all that. But I think
society has to introspect.
Society has to put in its
Vrinda, you want to say
helping
something
hand.
On the police aspect, two things. One, during the change in law, the Criminal Law Amendment Act, a very important provision that is introduced is section 166A in the Indian Penal Code, because precisely for this experience that we need accountability of the police. The police is not accountable. So today there is a provision in law which says if you don't lodge an FIR, if you don't investigate the case in accordance with law, especially for cases relating to sexual violence, you will be held criminally liable. However, I have been repeatedly asking at many forums, can somebody tell me that from 2013 to 2017 now, is there a single FIR registered against any police person across the country for violating section 166A? Reports of that are available, that violations have taken place in many newspapers and commentaries. But where is the FIR? You are actually allowing for this impunity. So if we are living in a society where we are saying, and police officers, senior police officers have often said this, that oh, they come from the same stock. So all right, they come from the same stock. Attitudinal changes will take place over generations. We can't wait for that. So then what are the measures? If somebody goes wrong, does not follow the procedure as per law, punish them. Unless you are going to do that, this will not turn around, and she's absolutely right. People ask me, what is the best way to get your FIR lodged? And my standard response is, go and do a dharna. You cannot get an FIR lodged otherwise, because there is no other way that the police listens to an ordinary citizen. The other aspect on whether more women in the police, I think we should not overemphasize this aspect. My experience of doing trials and seeing what kind of investigations are being done, yes, it is correct that the woman will feel more comfortable narrating. But what is most important is that the investigation is competent. If you're just going to put a woman who is a woman police officer who is not trained well, and that has happened post the Nirbhaya case, lot of women have been inducted as IOs, they've been assigned these cases, but today you have evidence which can be electronic in nature, so you have to be a competent investigator.
And that, Pamela, on this particular issue about the competent investigator and what is it that society can do? Varsha says that it's not enough to leave it to state, that much of this has to come from within. Now, is there any way that when we look at how Delhi operates, or for that matter, many parts of India, that given the very, very deeply held socio-cultural kind of norms, after all, let's not forget that India has the dubious distinction of engaging in female feticide. We kill our girls even before they are born.
Absolutely.
So given this kind of a mindset, do you see any sort of way out? Can the media play a role?
The masculinity has got so internalized that if a man touches a woman inappropriately, it's seen as, oh, it's okay. We've heard Mulayam Singh himself say that boys will be boys. So those kind of arguments are constantly being made. And on the other hand, you have people like Asharam saying that, if they were decent, if the women themselves were decent, it would never have happened. So the point is that unless society itself understands that these are things that we cannot accept, that, we need to expose people who articulate such such mindsets. We need to take them to account. I think that's one thing. And I think for the other, I think it's important that the way you look at masculinity has to change. The way you privilege masculinity has to change. And you're quite right. The links with skewed sex ratios and so on are so patent and obvious, as well as rising domestic violence, and everything comes down to the same thing.
Vrinda, you want to say something on this?
Because you, and I agree with Pam, it was very important and good that you framed it within security. But then where does security and masculinist tendencies, they tend to converge? Because if you're going to constantly say we're a strong state, death penalty is actually on the same spectrum of a masculinist response, which actually gives rise to violence against women of all hues, including sexual violence. So our whole way, and it is a broader issue where we will have to revisit what is security, what is human security.
Natasha, you heard, our other members talking about this whole question of the mindset. Now, for the younger generation, do you think that there is any sense that some of these attitudes and mores are changing?
Surely. I mean, I come from a college in which we celebrate empowerment of women, and we try and empower ourselves through, starting at home by ensuring that, my mom doesn't always have to go and heat up the food, or, my dad will listen to my mom when my mom wants to talk. So I think it's surely changing. But like I said previously, I come from a privileged household, and I think we have to go a long way, and gender sensitive education should be done, all across schools. So I still think we have a long way to go when it comes to the changing of mindsets.
Dr. Das, you have been director of the National Gandhi Museum. Is there something here that we are missing? 70 years of India's independence will be celebrated in a few months from now. We are aware of what the Mahatma had to say about, women in particular, violence in general. Is there anything that we should be reflecting over when we think of Mahatma Gandhi and this whole issue?
Yes, he said that hate the sin and not the sinner. You see, we are hating the sinner. We are not looking at the sin, how that sin, is imbibed in today's young people's psyche. And how do we treat it? Like Natasha spoke about, school children, and I fully endorse that it should start from the school education itself to respect other human being, whatever, girl or a boy. I mean, the life needs to be respected. Human being is to be respected.
Humanism should come back.
Absolutely,
maybe, that's one way of framing
absolutely.
it, to say that perhaps in the run-up to the 70th anniversary of the Indian independence, we should revisit our textbooks and bring Mahatma Gandhi and some of his thoughts back. But at the end of the day, the security of women and the girl child is a vital aspect of national security, yet it's often trampled upon or ignored. Indian discourse going back to the ancient times, for instance, Chanakya in the Arthashastra, had identified the security of women as an important metric for assessing the efficacy and integrity of the state and its multiple organs. Yet, as our discussion highlighted, there are many gaps and omissions in the Indian experience. However, the state alone cannot be held culpable. Let me share one stark statistic. As per the National Crime Bureau data, in 2015, India had 34,651 cases of rape that were reported. And of them, 33,098 cases, or more than 95%, the victim knew the offender or the perpetrator, meaning they were lurking in the family, friends, and acquaintances. Violence against women is part of an inherited gender hierarchy and a deeply embedded socio-cultural certitude that prioritizes the male over the female. State and society need to address this issue diligently over the long term. The parent at home and the teacher at school are part of the enabling ecosystem. The state can legislate to ensure equity and justice and acknowledge the centrality of the security of women across the board. And such laws must be implemented rigorously. But we began with the Nirbhaya case. Many such violations are being investigated or prosecuted across India, and closure is distant. What is the contour or texture of justice for a rape victim and the traumatized family? Is the death penalty too severe? Can other penalties be considered? Can investigative procedures be more empathetic to the victims? These are questions that need much greater deliberation. As our panelists have indicated, it's a long road ahead. On that note, allow me to thank my guests, Dr. Das, Ms. Philipose, Ms. Grover, and Ms. Ahuja. And thank you for watching Security Scan. Goodbye.